Good evening. I am Kimberly Coleman, pronouns she and hers, president of the Beta Kappa chapter of Beta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated. Beta Phi Omega Sorority is one of the oldest LGBTQ plus sororities. We were founded on the campus of Florida A&M University and are celebrating our 20th year of excellence in sisterhood, victory with pride, and awareness through education. With a passion for voting instilled in me by my parents, I have the honor and privilege this evening to call together three diverse and phenomenal women in the LGBTQ plus community to discuss the important topic of exactly how to vote with pride in the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia, affectionately known as the DMV, during the upcoming presidential election. I'll be your moderator tonight for our virtual panel, which will cover how to register to vote, how to request your absentee ballot, how to return that ballot, and how to vote safer in person, and much more. As the president of the Beta Kappa chapter of Beta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated, our chapter serves DC, suburban Maryland, including Prince George's, Anne Arundel, Charles, and Montgomery counties, as well as Northern Virginia. We support our community in a variety of ways, including hosting the Black Lesbian Support Group, which meets virtually this Sunday at 1 p.m. in partnership with the DC Center for the LGBT community, where we chit chat, reflect, and network in a safe space. I live with my beautiful wife Leah in Maryland, and I have two amazing adult sons, Anthony and Andrew. I am passionate about serving my community, especially when the opportunity to form partnerships or endeavors such as this one present themselves. I am a practicing Nichiren Buddhist with Ahsoka Gakkai International, where our goal is world peace through individual happiness and personal transformation. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Cherie Hughes, co-chair of the HRC Greater DC Steering Committee and HRC Greater DC Political Action and Community Engagement Team for their help taking the possibility of this panel and making it a reality. Also, thank you Taylor Pinkney of HRC DC and Kia Williams, Secretary of the Beta Kappa chapter of Beta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated, for your behind the scenes support of tonight's event. First, joining me in the conversation tonight, my soror from Beta Phi Omega Sorority is Latoy Williams, pronoun she, her, who serves her community in many aspects. She is the Director of National Programming for Beta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated and Vice President of the Beta Lambda chapter serving the Baltimore area. Latoy is also the co-chair of the Baltimore Steering Committee with the Human Rights Campaign, and she is currently the host and executive producer of Queer Conversations, an LGBTQ plus talk show. Miss Williams volunteers monthly with My Sister's Place Lodge, a home for women transitioning from homelessness to home stability, along with a host of other LGBTQ plus organizations such as Black Equity Baltimore, the Pride Center of Maryland, and Catholic Charities. Although her educational background is in business administration and accounting, her heart for social justice and Black LGBTQ people has catapulted her into the community as an advocate, educator, and activist. Welcome to my soror Latoy. Thank you for your efforts to ensure the success of tonight's event and for joining us this evening.
Hey, sis. Thank you for having me.
Hey, great to be with you. Our partners for this event are full-time staff members with the Human Rights Campaign. We have Narissa Rahaman, Associate Regional Field Director for the Human Rights Campaign. Narissa most recently developed and led HRC's six-figure investment in the 2019 Virginia General Assembly elections, targeting and mobilizing thousands of voters who helped elect a pro-equality majority in the House and Senate, giving the Commonwealth a progressive trifecta for the first time in almost 3 decades. It's amazing. Narissa played a key campaign role in the 2020 Virginia legislative session, where Virginia became the first in the South to pass comprehensive non-discrimination protections for LGBTQ Virginians. Prior to working at HRC, Narissa led fieldwork in the South for 8 years for progressive candidates at the state legislature, congressional, and gubernatorial levels. Through her passion for voter registration, voting rights, and equal access to the polls, Narissa hopes to make the ballot box accessible to all. She is originally from Barbados, but was raised in Florida and has now been slowly making her way up the East Coast. Narissa currently resides in Richmond, Virginia, with her partner and their three new houseplants. Narissa, welcome and thank you for all your hard work towards greater equality and for your assistance in planning tonight's event and serving on this amazing panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kimberly, and great to see y'all. And I have to say, it's now 7 houseplants. So
Way to go. Wow. That's great. We are also joined by Hope Jackson, who is an experienced advocate and campaign manager who serves as HRC's Deputy Campaign Director, managing legislative and electoral efforts across the Southern, Midwest, and Mountain West states. She is responsible for the long-term strategic planning and implementation of HRC's organizing efforts, strengthening HRC's partnerships and coalitions nationwide. Prior to joining HRC, Hope was an employment, labor, and bankruptcy attorney. Although not practicing, Hope's commitment to social justice fuels the work she does every day in the fight for LGBTQ plus equality. Hope, thank you for taking the time out of what is surely a very busy season to join us this evening.
How did you know? I'm so thankful to be here with you all. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Wonderful, ladies. So let's get started. Ladies, your vast wealth of experience, passion, and knowledge is sure to inspire, inform, and engage our joint LGBTQ communities for this critical discussion on Decision Day 2020. As of today, we are only 46 days from Election Day.
Wow.
To the community, yeah, it's amazing. It's coming up very quickly. To the community watching at home, we encourage you, share this on your pages, start a watch party to ensure as many of your friends and family get this critical information as possible. Also, if you have specific questions about voting, please share those here as well, and we will cover as many of them as we can. So let's get started. We know that making sure we're registered to vote is very important as a first step to ensure that our vote gets counted on Election Day. We are in the middle of September and voting registration will end soon, but deadlines and voting registration requirements vary by jurisdiction. Latoy, can you help us understand what are the voter registration deadlines for DC, Maryland, and Virginia? And what is the process to register to vote in the DMV?
That's a huge question. To kind of make it short, we have this really great graphic that hopefully you all can see on your screen right now. So deadlines for Washington, DC is October 12th. You can register by mail, by email, or by fax. For Maryland and Virginia, you can register online or by mail. Now, there is a real quick shortcut. You can go to www.vote.org. And by going to that website, you would click on your particular municipality. It will bring you to your state and your location so that you can register quickly, all at the ease of doing it in your home.
Awesome. Okay, so if viewers go to www.vote.org, then what do they do next?
There's a few things. So you would click on your particular state, which is either Maryland, DC, or Virginia. And then there's a few steps that you will go through and it will connect you directly to your particular municipality. And then once you register, it'll send you a confirmation and then you'll be able to receive that information via mail or email.
Okay, awesome. And I think we have some slides that cover some of those, what those municipality websites look like.
Yes. Washington, D.C. is a little different. You have to download the form, complete the form, and send it back. But for the most part, it does take you to that particular municipality's website so that you can get that information.
Okay, awesome. That's great to know. And And when you say send the form back, how do you send the form back for DC? Do I have to mail it back? What are my options there?
So you can complete the form and email the form to DC registration, dcboe.org.
Got it. Got it. Okay, that's good to know. And I think and we had a slide that came up that showed the Maryland and Virginia websites as well. And going through a site like vote.org is important because sometimes if you just go to Google, you might get onto a site that's not your official election page. So it's
Right.
really good to go through, a site like www.vote.org.
Right.
Awesome, LaToy.
And just to mention really quickly, going to Google is a really good place to get information. However, there have been some misleading information that's put out there. So in order to make sure that you are getting the most accurate information possible is to go to your state, city, or county municipality website or go to www.vote.org so that you know the information is absolutely correct, it's been vetted, it's been tested.
That's a great point. Okay, thank you so much. So I have a question about registering to vote. Narissa, for those within our community who may now go by a different name than when they first registered to vote, do they have to change their name on their voter registration? How do they ensure that they're going to be able to vote on election day?
Yeah, thank you, Kimberly. This is such an important question and an important issue to tackle because voting is a key part of our participation in society. And we really want to make sure that all voices are able to be heard and that folks are able to participate in elections and participate in voting. And that every voter should have the opportunity to vote regardless of gender identity. So if you have recently updated your name or changed your name, you should definitely update that on your voter registration to reflect this. We hear all the time about strict voter ID laws, and this impacts many marginalized communities, including trans and non-binary voters. And those are some barriers that folks can face when they go to vote on election day. But having an ID that doesn't match your gender identity or presentation should not affect your right to cast a ballot in any state. Fortunately here in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, you are not required to present a photo ID when you go and vote. And in fact, just this year, Virginia passed legislation that was signed into law that removes the photo ID requirement, which expands access to the ballot box for so many Virginians, including trans and non-binary voters. So, first things first, check your voter registration status. Update it if you need to. If folks still have reservations and hesitation about showing up in person, whether for early voting or on election day, requesting your absentee ballot, is an option for you to vote.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you, Narissa. That's really helpful and good to know. And that kind of leads us to the next question, because I think it's really important to talk about this voting plan. We hear a lot about make a voting plan. President Obama even released a short video yesterday about a voting plan. Hope, can you explain what does it mean to make a voting plan and why is it so important specifically during this election?
Absolutely. My mom would always tell me that if you fail to plan, you should plan to fail.
Yes.
And that is really true about voting. I'm going to just tell you everything will happen. Mishaps happen all the time. The car breaks down, it's flooding outside,
Yes.
it's snowing, or you just got your hair done and it's too hot for you to stand in the line. And so these things happen. And so you definitely need to think through all of these things. It's not about just on voting day what you're going to do, but this is a plan to consider. Have you checked your voter registration? Is it updated? Is your address updated? I just checked mine last week and somehow my information was all wrong. I just voted in this past primary. And so that's something I was able to check and go in and say, oh no, this is wrong. I'm glad I caught it. It gives me time to get that information updated. But those types of things happen. We saw in the South that folks were kicked off the voter rolls. Had you checked all of that information early, of course, you would have been able to catch that. And so it's not anyone's fault that this does happen, not the voters' fault, I would say that.
Right.
But if
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at these things on a regular basis, it's super important that you just check. Make sure that your registration is updated. Think about when you're going to vote, because this is your mental picture, your reminder. I know I'm going to vote on Tuesday in person. I'm going to vote on my lunch break. I'm going to make sure my car has gas because I know traffic is heavy in that area, and I may sit on the highway for a while. I'm going to make sure I have a babysitter. I'm going to make sure I have snacks because the lines may be long.
Yeah.
So
right. And time to wait in line.
Exactly. Consider the peak times of voting at your voting location. But then just opposite of that, if you're requesting a ballot, an absentee ballot or a mail-in ballot, you need to know what's on that ballot before you fill it out. And please do not wait until the last minute. So exactly how you would plan out your week for real business, you want to do that with your vote, because this is serious business. It's your vote and your voice. And so you want to take that time to walk through just a mental picture of how your day is going to look, the day that you cast the most important vote of your lifetime. And so thinking about it that way, just sit down for 10, 20 minutes and just think it out. You don't have to write it down, but it's an accountability factor for you to make sure that you're aware of all the laws for your state, for your county, what you need. Do you need ID? What type of ID? Thinking through all of those things to make sure there is no mishaps and your vote is counted on election day.
Hope, that's super helpful. It's like, wow, this is a huge day coming up, 46 days away, to make sure that our votes are heard and counted. That's, you spoke truth to power right there. So if you are just joining us, I am Kimberly Coleman of Beta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated. I'm here today with the Human Rights Campaign and also one of my sorors, LaToya Williams, also of Beta Phi Omega Sorority and Human Rights Campaign, discussing how to vote with pride on Decision Day 2020. So we're talking about a voting plan, and now that we understand how critical it is, Hope said, take 5-10 minutes. Make yourself an accountability plan, how you're going to vote. If viewers decide that their plan includes voting outside of an in-person situation, maybe an absentee ballot or a vote by mail situation, Narissa, could you help us understand what are the deadlines and the process here in the DMV to request that absentee ballot?
Yeah, this is a big thing this year. And I think, just to add on to what Hope was saying, it's not just election day this year, it's really an election cycle, a whole season. The entire fall season is how we're going to be able to vote this year. And folks have a lot of options. We understand with COVID-19 and the pandemic, some folks want to feel a little bit more safer and practice social distancing when they're voting. Absentee ballots or requesting your ballot, or at least having that option if you decide, later on in October that you don't want to vote on election day. We're seeing a lot of folks request their ballots. In a lot of the most competitive districts in Virginia, absentee ballot requests are already up 200% compared to where they were on 2016 on election day.
Wow.
So, we're going to see a lot of folks casting their ballot this year. And, like Hope was saying, it's important for you to start thinking about how you want to vote this year. So if you do choose, I want to vote and fill out an absentee ballot, there are a number of ways you can do that depending on where you're living. And there are a variety of deadlines. So for the easiest, you folks who are joining us from DC, you don't need to worry anything about requesting a ballot. The DC Board of Elections says they are going to just mail you a ballot. Mail every voter a ballot in the first week of October. So, in 2 weeks or so, ballots should be hitting your mailboxes in DC.
Awesome.
Returning it, you can either return your ballot by mail or at a drop-off site. So you just want to, DC, don't have to worry about anything. You're going to get your ballot. You don't need to worry about requesting it. For Maryland and Virginia, you no longer need an excuse to vote absentee this year. So, in previous election years, you might have to have a reason, sort of like you would be overseas, or you might have a health issue that's preventing you to get to the polls. Not this year. You know, they understand that the COVID-19 and the pandemic is an obstacle and a barrier for folks that who want to vote on election day or who don't want to. For Maryland, you want to go to the State Board of Elections website to request your mail-in ballot, and you can do that online. You also have the option, if you have a printer at home, you can print a form and you can return it, and you can return that by mail, fax, or email. So you don't have to print it out and mail it in. You have a few other options. If anyone still has a fax machine out there, we should definitely be friends, because I would love to hear more about this. But
how they're using it.
Yeah. You can also scan it and email it back in. If you choose that option, you want to make sure that it is in, and it has to be received by October 20th. And that's whether you're mailing it in, you're faxing it in, or you're emailing it in. I highly recommend not waiting till October 20th, even if you're not sure right now. Yeah, even if you're not sure right now whether you want to vote absentee or if you want to vote on election day, request it early so you receive it early, and you have the option of returning it early if you'd like to. You know, in some locations in Maryland, you'll be able to return it through a Dropbox, but you know, those are your options for Maryland. Also in Virginia, you do not need a reason anymore to vote absentee. The deadline for that, and again, you can do this online or you can do it through the mail, is the deadline to request your ballot is October 23rd. For Virginia, you know, ballots are actually going to be starting mailed out tomorrow. So folks in Virginia are going to have the chance to vote starting as early as tomorrow. For Virginia, as soon as they receive your request and process it, and once you're approved, your ballot's going to go out within 3 days of that request.
That's awesome.
You'll have until October 3rd to request it. Obviously, again, don't recommend waiting until then, just because you know, we know Board of Elections and the Postal Service this year, because of the pandemic, are going to be overwhelmed with requests, receiving and mailing out ballots. So, you know, get ahead of the curve. Don't wait till the last minute to come up with your vote plan. Do that now. You know, request your ballot, and then, you know, as you move through October, you can figure out how you want to return it.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Narissa. So the key I'm hearing is request early. Go ahead, get your ballot requested. I know from Maryland, I live in Maryland, we did receive a application to request a ballot. So you may, if you check your mail, you may still have it. You can just sign it, put it in the envelope, send it back, and you can get your ballot that way as well. So awesome.
I'm telling folks, request it early, receive it early, return it early. Just follow those 3 R's, and
love it.
Again, let's do election, you know, just not as a day, but as an entire season this year. And you know, you get to choose how you want to move through the season. Yeah,
absolutely. I really like that. Okay, so we talked about some people, if they want to request an absentee ballot, they have a few weeks left, but they should do it early. The other thing about absentee ballots is I'm hearing a lot about this absentee ballot versus vote by mail. Hope, can you help us understand that? What is the difference?
Short answer, there is no difference.
Okay.
It just depends on the state you're in. I think with absentee ballot, folks are confusing that with what primarily happens if you're military or you're overseas or you have a qualified reason for requesting one. The absentee ballot generally requires an application. But right now, with COVID happening, a lot of states are sending out absentee ballots to folks to sign up to get a mail ballot. Either way, it involves mail. I think that's what folks need to know. There are a large group of states, I say large, excuse me, there are a large group of states that are not sending out ballots to their voters. And so those folks have to request. But then there are those states who were doing mail voting all along before COVID. It's like 5 or 6 states. Not California is one of those states that automatically will send you a ballot. And so for those folks, they're doing all mail voting. And so they interchangeably use absentee voting or absentee ballot.
Got it.
There's a lot of confusion. But the thing you need to know is you have to determine what your state requires, whether or not they're going to send you a ballot automatically, or do you need to fill out an application? Is there a qualifying reason that you need to have, or is it a no excuse state? And sometimes it can be either or. If you have an illness, they will list out all the varying reasons that you can request.
Yeah.
For folks who are in all mail voting states already, they can request what we call an absentee ballot too.
Got it. Okay.
So if you're not going to be in your state during the time where you normally would receive your mail ballot, then you can request that you receive it much earlier than that time period. So you don't have to have a reason. I was out of town, so I requested one. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go visit home. I'm going to request this because it's going to be late getting to me and I won't be back in time. And I just fill out a simple form, sign it, make sure you sign it, no matter what you're using, sign it and get it returned on time and get it back immediately, not later, immediately.
Good point. Yes.
Yeah. And then track it, of course.
Yes. Okay. So that's really helpful. So there's no difference. Vote by mail, absentee, it's all the same. Barack Obama in his video likened it to Donald Glover, Childish Gambino, right? It's all the same. It's all the same. Yeah, they're out there trying to confuse us, but we're here. We're here with the right information. So don't be confused. Don't get it twisted and think that your vote doesn't count or that it won't matter, because it absolutely does.
Yes, it
So
does.
okay, awesome, Hope. So all right, so we talked about a voting plan. We've talked about absentee ballot. We now know there's no difference between that and vote by mail. So now hopefully viewers are thinking about what they're going to do with respect to their voting plan. And if that includes requesting an absentee ballot, Narissa touched on this a little bit, but there's lots of different ways in the DMV that voters can return that ballot. So Latoy, can you tell us about the deadlines and what people's options are?
I lost my slide.
Oh, it's okay. Actually, Taylor, one more. We didn't. Yep, one more. Just a little technical difficulty, folks.
Yeah. So one
Bear
of the
with
things
us.
I did want to touch on is that, as Narissa stated, the 3 R's: request it early, receive it early, and return it early. But in doing so, make sure they have the correct address. So that's why it's very important for you to check your information, go through, verify that they have the correct address, the correct name, so that you can get the ballot and return it properly. And once you receive it, you can return it by mail, you can return it by Dropbox. You have the opportunity to print it at home if you're doing all of this information online. And then you can track your ballot as well. So Narissa, you want to talk about tracking the ballot?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And I know for, in Virginia, if you're joining us from Virginia, they will accept your ballot up until 3 days after the election. This is something that they just decided. So up until November 6th, you can get your ballot in. You can also, if you're worried about, the Postal Service is going to be overwhelmed by sending out ballots and receiving ballots, you can hand deliver yours in to like a registrar's office or even an early voting site. So you have options, to return it. Virginia this year, actually just a few weeks ago, Governor Northam signed into law a bill that allows every locality to set up drop boxes where you can drop a safe and secure drop box where you can drop your ballot in there. But yeah, let's talk about how once you've sent it off into the world, how you're able to sort of follow your ballot on its journey to being counted. So in Virginia, if you live in places like Arlington or Loudoun County, those some of those localities already have a ballot tracking system. But a new rule that the State Board of Elections just decided, I believe it was almost a month ago, maybe, makes absentee ballot tracking a requirement statewide. So this
Oh,
year, when
okay.
you receive, if you
Great.
decided, I want to vote by mail this year or request an absentee ballot, and you receive that ballot this year, it's actually going to have a new special U.S. Postal Service, what they call an intelligent barcode. So this really allows election officials to track ballots as they make it out their way out to voters. And it's also going to allow you as a voter to track your ballot as it goes on their way back to the registrar's office. And all of your state Board of Elections websites will have a portal that allows you to track your ballot. And it usually just requires you to put in information like your name, date of birth, your address. It doesn't require you to put in any code or anything. It's really just going to ask for minimal information. For Maryland voters, you can use the state's voter look tool, and that will again allow you to check the status of your absentee ballot or your provisional ballot right there on the State Board of Elections webpage. So again, you just need to enter a few details like your name, date of birth, zip code, and it'll have a box for you to check your status. And the same in DC, you all are going to all get a mail-in ballot, and it will also have tracking information on it. I think a question a lot of folks have is, oh my gosh, I've requested my absentee ballot, but like, where is it? Why hasn't it arrived yet? I would say, give it some time. We know registrar's offices, we know Board of Elections, we know the U.S. Postal Service is going to be demanded to perform at an expectation at a level that they have not in previous years. So I think, exercising a little bit of patience, can go a long way, and just keep checking the portals. I know a lot of states are using these ballot tracking tools for the first time. I don't think that's anything to worry about, but I think being a little bit patient will go a long way this year, and allowing information to update as quickly as they can. But again, request it early so that you're not waiting, mid-October saying, where's my ballot? And then it's and then you have to make a decision if you want to vote early in person.
Right. And I know for me, I always like to take that picture of my ballot number. I don't know. I just feel better about it having just me having my tracking number. I know I'm not supposed to need it, but I don't know.
Putting it in the mailbox. Yeah.
Well, I like to take the picture because there'll be a barcode actually on your ballot. Each ballot is individual. So I like to take the picture so I have my number, and if I need to track it later, I can. And that kind of brings us to, we wanted to cover a little bit about, in addition to tracking it through the system, which is great, but there's some specific things about what we have to know when we fill it out, right? Like Hope mentioned, if we don't sign it, it won't get counted. There's some other key things in the DMV that we wanted to go over. Do I need a stamp? There's all these different things. So Latoya, can you walk us through, once we get that ballot, before we send it back, what are some of those key things that we need to do when we want to vote by mail?
Sign it.
Sign it? Okay. Can I use
it.
red ink? What color ink? Can I use red?
No, you can only use black or blue.
Only black or blue. Okay.
Yes. You must sign it, and you must read it. Read it from top to bottom. And it comes with an envelope, so you don't need a stamp. Put it in an envelope, seal it.
Okay. So it's postage paid. Okay.
Right. And then, we talked about in Maryland and in some of the other places, they will have drop boxes available. But if push comes to shove, drop it in the mail. This is one of the reasons why if you request it early and receive it early, you can return it early. So you're giving the post office and, the municipalities and the voting offices time enough to receive it and make sure that your vote is counted. Even though, we know that you can send it in and it may be counted up until 3 days after the election, why wait? Why allow yourself to have that grace period? I know some of us are procrastinators, but this is not the time to do it. This is the election of our lives. And in order to make sure that we are voting with pride and that our vote matters and our voices are heard, it's important that we do this timely and respectfully.
Absolutely. Okay. That's really helpful. So We got some information. We don't need a stamp if we're going to vote by mail. We need
Correct.
to sign it, sign the ballot, sign the ballot, sign the ballot, return it early, and fill it out in blue or black ink only. Okay.
And read it.
Okay. And read it. Make sure you read it. Absolutely. There's some. I mean, like many of the panelists have said, this is the decision of our lives that we're dealing with here. So I have a question. Hope, even though 1 in every 4 votes cast during the 2018 election was via the mail, we hear many people in the news cycle nowadays saying that, vote by mail is fraudulent. They're really trying to convince us that our vote won't count, that it doesn't matter. We shouldn't even try. We've talked about tracking ballots, but can you help us understand if we want to mail that ballot in, is what makes vote by mail, safe or legitimate?
So I definitely think the media has spent a lot of time talking about vote by mail being fraudulent. And I will keep this nonpartisan for sure. I will just say that voter fraud with mail-in voting is rare, super rare. This is not a huge problem for America. I think there's a majority of Americans that believe that voter fraud is like happening rampantly, and it's just not. The Brennan Center, as well as the Pew Research Center, like there are so many folks that have done really great research in looking into this. And what they did find was it was 0.00003% of voter fraud that was actually real. And most of the time there were clerical errors. So there wasn't anything that was happening where someone was impersonating a voter. The Brennan Center said you're more likely to get struck by lightning, and I believe that to be true. No one is out here trying to vote for you. No one is doing that. And I think that we have to continue to just tell folks and educate them about voting by mail. And that it's not something that hasn't been happening for years. Millions of Americans have been voting using the mail system. In California, in places like Colorado, that's vote by mail, Utah. Like there are states that have been doing this successfully without any instances of voter fraud happening. And when there was, just checking into those cases and knowing that it's super tiny, not enough to rig an entire election. And so I think that's something we have to continue to educate folks on and emphasize that no one is going to take over an election by voter impersonation or fraud. And so, I will say that if you want to look at some articles, Forbes has put out a few things this week, as well as Washington Post.
Okay, that's really helpful. Hope. And, you bring up some really good points, and we haven't talked much about the other, we talked about the Decision Day 2020. That's the big thing right now. We're not far out, but we're also in the middle of a pandemic. And, it's affecting so many in our community right now. And even in right now, in 2018, so many people voted in alternative ways, meaning outside of the traditional voting booth. And right now, we're showing you all some, not right now. We had a graphic up with some options on, what are some ways that we can vote safer? So, hey, maybe vote by mail is not for you, even though it's, there's no evidence of fraud, even though you can track your ballot, maybe still at the end of the day, you are a person, you want to either vote in person or take your ballot in by hand. So Latoya, can you walk us through in the DMV, what are some of those options that people have?
Sure. You can hand deliver your ballot to the local Board of Elections or early voting center in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So you will go to the websites and find out what locations are available for you to drop off your particular ballot. You can drop off the ballot DC, Maryland, and Virginia, DC and Maryland only. Once again, check.
But I think Narissa told us Virginia is going to have voting.
That's
drop
right.
boxes now.
That's right.
Brand new.
Yeah, a lot of localities are going to be putting up drop boxes. I believe when ballots go out starting tomorrow, The Board of Elections is including some more information in that envelope about where a ballot drop box may be located in your area. Again, they decided all of this 2 weeks ago. But again, the options are there.
And this is
Awesome.
why checking the Board of Elections website is super important. You can go to your particular state, or if you go to www.vote.org, they will have all of the most recent and updated information there for you as well. And then early voting. So, if you are one of those people that you don't want to put it in the mail, you're not sure about these drop boxes, maybe you think someone's going to ride by and pick up the box and just take it with them. You can always go and vote early. So in DC, you can begin voting early as soon as October 27th. In Maryland, October 26th. And in Virginia, September 18th.
Awesome. September 18th in Virginia. That's super early. So
that's
you
like
can
tomorrow.
Get that done tomorrow.
That's tomorrow. And that's a new law they passed this year. They said let's start allowing folks voting 45 days before the election. And this was a law they passed before the pandemic hit. So it actually is a really great finding for it. But, again, for early voting in Virginia, you can go to an early vote location. They're setting up some based on locality starting tomorrow. You can go do that. That you can also go and vote at your registrar's office. You can just walk in and request an absentee ballot, vote right there, and send it on their way. So there are a lot of options this year. So like Hope was saying earlier, we have so many more options. Well, we've had these options for a while, but we have options to vote. A lot more of us are just going to be choosing options that we did not choose in previous election years. So really take time and sit with yourself or, your family, your partner, and think about how you want to vote this year. And just do everything you need to do to meet all those deadlines.
Absolutely. There's a lot to think about, but thankfully we have a lot of options, and it's really about figuring out what works best for you and your family and your situation. So, at the end of the day, a lot of people are still going to, want to go out and vote on election day. Voter turnout in the 2018 election, which was a midterm cycle, was at 50%, which it's kind of unbelievable, but it was the highest since the 1964-65 election, which followed the passage of the Voting Rights Act. So based on that turnout, some people are estimating there might be as much as 70% turnout during this election. What are some ways that, for voters who say, you know what, all that's great, but at the end of the day, I still want to go vote on election day. What are some ways for those folks to make sure that they keep themselves safe?
Yeah, that's it. I was actually texting with voters in Virginia today, asking them how they plan to vote this year. And a lot of folks are still undecided. And many folks messaged me back and said, I'm going to be voting on election day because that is the option that they're safest with. That is the one that they know like the back of their hand. If you're planning to vote on election day this year, I think like we expect for any presidential year, expect that there might be long lines. Have a plan to, have your mask and be able to social distance. Really figure out the exact time you want to vote this year, and not only one that works with your schedule, but that allows you to, potentially have to wait in line for longer, and bring everything that you think you might need to vote. Whether, bring some sort of form of identification. None of the states that we're talking about tonight or districts require a photo ID for you to vote, but bring some information that identifies who you are. In case you run into any issues. But I think just give yourself extra time on election day. Understand that there may be long lines. There may be some folks for some reason who maybe didn't receive their absentee ballot or they got there too late. So a lot of those folks who don't feel safe returning those things in person may go and end up voting on election day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just really quickly, I wanted to mention that Alexandria Hawkins, our soror, she mentioned in the comments that she enjoys the excitement of Election Day. And a lot of people feel that same way. I know growing up, I would go to vote with my mom. And I brought my kids with me when I went to go vote, just so that they understood the process and could see everyone there and they could ask questions. So if that is your choice, remember that social distancing is still super important. Like, you need to be at least 6 feet away from someone. And then, you need to wear your mask and wear it properly so that it's covering your nose all the way down to your chin. Bring yourself some hand sanitizer.
I can't wear it down here. I can't wear my mask down here.
No, it's not a chin
not
strap.
down there. Okay.
Do I need to demonstrate?
No, it's okay. Next time. We'll do it on the
No,
next
but
live.
it's just, the same things, and hopefully all of us are doing this. But if you're going to 7-Eleven or if you're going to the grocery store and you are practicing social distancing and wearing your mask, then you would definitely, do the same thing. Bring a pen, as Jamie said. Another one of my sorors on here said, bring a pen, bring your identification, bring a snack, wear comfortable shoes. Allow yourself time. We all talk about a plan. A voting plan is super important. And I know it seems like so foreign to us because before we would just go to the polls, right?
Yeah. And there might not be anybody there, and we just go in. And,
we're living in a different world right now. Unfortunately, we are in the midst of a pandemic, and it is a super important election. So, be prepared. Request it early, return it early. I can't say it enough.
Absolutely. I know. Get it done.
Get it done.
All right, ladies. This has been phenomenal. I don't want to keep you all too long on here. I just want to remind anyone who, if you joined us midstream, the full video will be available on the Beta Kappa and Beta Lambda chapter, as well as the HRC Greater DC Facebook pages. So please watch and share it with your friends and family. Critical information here for everyone. And, because information is changing so rapidly, Narissa let us know about changes in Virginia's laws that just happened, so recently. These amazing ladies have already agreed to convene with us again. So please mark your calendars for October 7th. Check out the Mobilize website to RSVP, where you can get reminders for our next event. We'll have even more information for you focused on, again, absentee balloting, vote by mail, and voting in person on Election Day. If you have questions between now and then, if something comes up, inbox us at the Beta Kappa, the Beta Lambda, or HRC Greater DC Facebook pages. And we'll try to include as many of your questions as possible in our upcoming discussions. I also want to give everyone a critical reminder to visit 2020census.gov by September 30th. Time is running out to complete your census survey. 4 in 10 households have not yet responded. And the census determines critical funding for each jurisdiction and is used to allocate the number of electoral college votes that each state receives, which are ultimately used to elect the president. So make your voice heard at the ballot box and in the census survey. That's very important. I am Kimberly Coleman. Thank you all so much for joining us today. You ladies have been wonderful, so insightful, engaging, and informative. I cannot thank you enough. And to the audience that joined us and participated, thank you again. This has been How to Vote with Pride, Edition 1. Join us again October 7th. Everyone, have a great night. Bye-bye.
Thanks, y'all.